I want to tell the real story of Radiant Church.
Anxious, is anybody going to show up? Is anybody going to come? You have no guarantees.
You know, I've heard you say that in every moment there's been an invitation from God and a demand of your faith, but then the miracle of God for the breakthrough.
And here's one of the things that people don't see a lot of times. I was discouraged. I just said, I don't know. We're never going to get that building. I don't know what we're going to do. And I'll never forget. Do you remember what you said?
What is something that you would share with somebody, in their 20s, who's facing situations like an unknown situation?
That the unknown is almost the beautiful part of it.
God's presence was in the car with me, and I heard him speak the phrase, build a praying and a worshiping church, and you'll strengthen the body to reach the world.
Hey everyone, my name's Sean. Welcome to the Radiant Podcast, where we have real conversations about God, church, and life. Today's episode, we're joined by pastors Lee and Jane Cummings from Radiant Church, and we're going to go through, the real story of Radiant Church. We're going to tell stories of, from the very first church service to the growth and expansion, even into post-COVID life and what that's been like for the church. And the thing that I have seen throughout the whole story of this is Lee and Jane's faithfulness in the unknown. And whatever season that you are in right now, I think these stories are going to be powerful as you press in and engage with the Lord in these unknown seasons. So let's jump right in. Pastor Lee and Jane, thank you so much for being here with us on the podcast. I have loved getting to know you guys over the years. I know there's been many years before that you guys have been alive and doing ministry before I knew you.
Are you calling us old, Sean?
Not too old. You're in young 50s, I think is kind of where you're at. And, you guys, so I've been married for around 15, 16 years. You guys are 30, how many years?
32, and then July will be 33.
Wow,
33.
So,
yep.
Jane, what's it like being married to Lee for 33 years?
All right, cut.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So good.
What's something that you've learned about Lee, you didn't know about him at year one, that now something you've discovered in him in year 32?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, I would say year 1 to 5 would be the most dramatic. And then just kind of after that, you just kind of flow with it.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I'm still amazed that he doesn't pick clothes up.
Yeah,
literally, I'm the laundry chutes are right there, and your clothes are right there, and they just never get in there.
Yeah.
So that to me just is mind blowing.
It's
I blow her mind.
Yeah.
I blow her mind.
My wife has this ability to never shut a cabinet door, and so I'm always babe, so I know when she's been in the kitchen, every cabinet door is open, and I'm just hey, it's not too hard just to shut it, and then she's well, you can do your own laundry and pick up your laundry, and I'm I'll shut the cabinets. I'll do my part here in this marriage. But it's amazing.
You're not going to ask me that question about Jane, are you?
No,
I knew it.
I can softball one to you.
No,
What's
it's too late now.
What's one thing that you've loved about Jane in 30 years?
There's too many things that I love about her to even begin.
I know.
That's just one?
Just
one.
I thought you were going to ask what's one thing I've discovered.
Well, what's
Jane.
one thing you discovered?
Yeah.
Thank you for asking. That no matter what time she starts to get ready for something, if it's if we have to leave at 1 and she starts at noon, she'll be a little bit late. If she starts at 10, she'll still be a little bit late. And she's, but she ends up, she's ready.
she's always ready. A little bit late, but it's always ready.
That's right. So
it's right on time, right? Yeah. What do you call that when you're at somebody? You don't want to be right at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, if one is fashionably late.
Fashionably late.
No, but honestly, she's amazing. Yes. She blows my mind.
Yeah.
Still.
I love that. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about is there's, you guys have been pastors of Radiant Church for about 28 years now. And, you've been married for almost 33 years. So it's there's we could talk about so many things just in those two statements. And then, like I said, you're in your young 50s. And it's one of those, I would love just to hear from you guys, just the story of Radiant and, what early beginnings of what was in your heart to plant a church? I mean, I know both of you. There's a lot of things that you are capable of doing, but you decided, and the Lord called you, and you decided to like plant a church and to be doing it in faithfulness for this many years. I'd love just to hear, why you decided to do that. What was God calling you? What was those early days like? And then, I know it was around 1996, and now we're in 2025, and it's like,
Right.
and a lot has happened. And so I want to tell the real story of Radiant Church. People can look at a distance and be like, oh, this is who they are. This kind of church, or it's even, and that can come positive or negative. I want to tell the real story of what was happening in Radiant. And I know there's like many impactful moments, like the first service, the first check to missions, like the first new location, all these things that were like the first that were super impactful. But one thing that was standing out to me as I was praying through this time together is that, I've heard you say that in every moment there's been an invitation from God and a demand on your faith, but then the miracle of God for the breakthrough. And that's something that I've seen in you guys just over my 7-8 years here, is that you show great faithfulness in the midst of the unknown. And I just want to process that, talk about that. Where were these unknown moments that God gave you that invitation to have great faith, and then how you saw God break through? Because I know in my life personally, and I know I've talked to many other people, that everyone has those unknown moments. And when you can hear stories of the faithfulness of God in those unknown moments, it stirs your faith to like believe that, oh, well, if God can do this, then he can do that. And I want to lean into that. So I want to go back to the beginning. So the year was
the beginning.
Yeah.
In the beginning, what year was it?
Well, we started in 1996, and we were married in 1992. We spent first year and a half in Grand Rapids serving really a volunteer capacity at a church in Grand Rapids that we both started attending after we were newly married. Kind of rose up through the leadership ranks in youth ministry there.
Speaking of newly married, where's this photo
That
from?
one isn't newly.
How newly married is this?
That's 2 kids.
That's at a church picnic.
That's 3 kids, maybe. I think I'm pregnant for Tiffy.
Yeah.
Oh, 3 kids in.
That would have been like 97 or 98, about a year and a half into the church.
Yeah.
Rough.
I have some
That's
other
pretty rough.
little
I'm
fun
sure you
oldies in here. So.
So, 92, we get married. We spent about a year and a half in Grand Rapids. In 1993, we accepted a position in Kansas City as a youth pastor, moved there. That's where Jared was born.
Yeah, I had Ashley.
You had Ashley was just maybe 8 weeks old when we moved. And we were in Kansas City. It was really a suburb of Kansas City for almost 2 years. And in that time, Jared was born. And we realized a couple of things. We realized, that we wanted to be in West Michigan. We felt like that was home. And that's where we wanted to raise our family. And also that we felt called back, that's where we were ultimately supposed to be at.
You say called back. So you guys both born and raised in Michigan?
I was born in Detroit, or Detroit area, Pontiac, and then moved to Grand Rapids pretty young. I was like 7 or 8 when I moved to Grand Rapids. Jane.
Same house my whole life.
Wow.
I met him.
What a time.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that we lived 5 minutes from each other. Like ultimately the house like I moved into when I was 6th grade, because she had one house and her family never moved. I was in like 20 different houses my entire life. So we moved all the time. But ended up when I moved in 6th grade to Wyoming, which is right next to Grand Rapids, we were 5 minutes from each other, literally.
Wow.
And probably were in a lot of the, same parks or different things like that. Never met each other. Yeah. But it's just funny to think that the person you're gonna marry is that close to you, but you don't know them.
Stone's throw away.
So we moved back after Kansas City. We moved back in December of 1995. Lived with her mom and dad for a month or so, a couple months until we could get an apartment. And I knew that God had a new ministry assignment. Didn't know exactly what that was going to be, But in the meantime, I had to have a job. So I got a job at a department store, Jacobson's department store. It was important to us that Jane was able to be home. You know, at that time we had 2 small kids. So we got an apartment. I was teaching Bible college at the church that we had come from. So we kind of returned there. And then I was also working in the department store. And we were just kind of waiting.
And I think you knew you wanted to start a church, but you thought it'd be like when you were 40.
Yeah, I always kind of had it in my heart. And I would say the genesis of that, you know, you talk about an invitation that requires faith. It also, a lot of times, it starts with inspiration.
Yeah.
And I read a book by a mentor who's actually one of the apostolic overseers of Radiant, Lauren Covarrubias.
Yeah.
He wrote a book called About Father's House. And it was the story of how he started Mount Zion in Clarkston, Michigan, when he was 22 in his mom and dad's basement. And by then we knew Pastor Lauren, we knew Mount Zion.
Funny side note, when we moved back from, or was it before or when we
It was just when we were thinking about
back,
moving back, yeah.
He interviewed at Mount Zion for a job,
Okay.
Yeah. And
just knowing that we wanted to come back home. And you met with Pastor Lauren.
we kind of thought we'd
Yeah.
move there.
And it sounded like you get that job. I'm
Yeah.
like, but what did he say to you?
Well, he didn't say it to
He's
me
like, "You're not
until
cut
like
out
20
for it."
years
Right.
later.
Right.
So literally, we were in Kansas City, got a phone call. My Uncle Richard and my dad both at that time were going to Mount Zion. So Lauren knew of me. He knows my family, definitely. And he heard that we wanted to move back. So I don't know how that all went, but I got a phone call and we were going to my grandparents for something, spring break or something like that, summer. And he wanted me to interview. So we were pretty excited. I was very excited about it and really thought in my heart, yeah, we'll do this.
How old is this time?
I was 24.
Yeah, okay.
No.
What was when we were in Kansas City coming home?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was like 24. And
Was that like a fight you guys had or no?
if I was 23 months, if I was 23, 11 months and 27 days, then she's going to make sure.
Yeah.
Detail. Keeps me from being a liar and an embellisher. She's my guardrails. So anyways, we went to my grandparents. I went that morning. I got all dressed up. I'm sitting in his office, Lauren, and there was nobody more that I admired, even to this day. He's been, I would say, out of everybody, he's probably been the model for me of what I wanted to do in ministry and who I wanted to be. And so that was very exciting to me. I went and I interviewed, sat down at his desk, and he just asked me questions, and then like shook my hand and said, "Hey, thanks for coming by." And I'm like, "What just happened?" So I went home and I went to my grandparents, and Jane's like, "How did it go? How did it go?" I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how it went. Nothing ever happened, and never got a job offer. So anyways, we ended up in Grand Rapids. The flip side of that is, I don't know, 20 years later, I asked him about this. I'm like, "Hey, do you remember when I interviewed in your office?" And he's like, "Oh yeah." And you got to know Pastor Lauren. He's just really like the most chill, laid back person you've ever met. He's like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." And I'm like, "Okay, so now that we're way past that, can you like tell me what happened there? Because I thought for sure we were going to come and work for you at Mount Zion." He said, "I had every intention of hiring you, but as I was sitting there," and he's very prophetic. He said, "But as I was sitting there, the Lord said, 'Be careful, don't hire him. I have other plans for him.'"
Wow. That's
And-
crazy.
Isn't that wild?
But that he never told you that.
But he never told
Which
me.
is crazy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't think he wanted to like
Sway.
us and
Yeah,
you
no.
know,
If he had
as
told
a
me, I would have.
24-year-old.
right,
Yeah, that
exactly.
would have.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it might have been 23.
Oh, 23 and a half, something like that. Yeah.
How in the world?
I don't think you're 24.
I think it was 1995. We were in the process of moving home, which was 95.
Right.
And in 95,
We'll
I
fact
was
check all
24.
of this, don't worry.
Disclaimer.
Yeah. It's actually.
This is what
I know.
Sorry.
Oh, so anyways, that
Wow.
was not an option. So I didn't, at that point, I was like, I don't know. But anyways, his book that he had written of his story of planting, of starting Mount Zion and the journey of faith and walking in the Spirit and building a community that was based on the presence of God, power of the Holy Spirit, intimacy with with the Lord and his own process of becoming a man of God. 22 years old, he got married after he was a pastor, and today it's a flourishing, large church, influential church. When I read his book, I can honestly say I think that for me was the genesis to believe, not that I could be a pastor, because that was a call on my life, but the idea of starting something from the ground up. Yeah. When I read that, it was the seed of inspiration in my heart. And then from there, we ended up moving back home, giving it a period of time, serving, and then I was invited to do an internship at the church, which was paid. And I kind of in my mind thought we would do that for years. We would be on staff there for years, but pretty quickly.
This is up at Resurrection.
This is Resurrection Life Church. Pretty quickly, the Lord began to stir my heart that the time to plant was this was our next assignment. And I think I came home to our little apartment. I shared it with Jane. I had a conversation, I think, with Bobby or somebody about planting, and I came home and told her, I said, I really feel like that's what we're called to do. And she, in my mind, I really thought she would be like, I don't want to do that, because we had Kansas City was hard. It was not good for a newlywed couple with a small family. It was really difficult in ministry. We were at each other's throats. I was way too ambitious and driven. She was far away from family and frustrated with me. And my commitment was, we're not going to do anything until, we're in a healthier place and we're on this journey together. So, but to my surprise, she was like, if that's what God's saying, then let's do it. And that was the genesis. That was the beginning of it. And so I think in June we committed to that, and then all summer long we prepared for it. And then September 8th, 1996, we actually launched, at that time, Resurrection Life Church, which was in Richland. And the Goal 8 Community High School. And there it is.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. That was much later.
Yeah.
That was the fat era. That's what happens when you plant a church. Put on weight. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at these.
I pulled some of these here just to kind of.
I was in nursery, so I don't.
You don't remember much of this.
These.
Look at Mike.
Yeah.
So you had said September 1996 you launched, but I mean obviously there was some moments leading up to that. So like why here? Why Richland? I mean you were in Kansas City. You're born in Detroit. You're up in Grand Rapids. Like I know Richland now and like from 2018 on, but it's like. But this was back in 1996.
Right.
There was no McDonald's, no light, no bank.
Richland's like a metropolis now compared to what it was then.
Yeah.
How that happened is we were getting, at that time, our pastor in Grand Rapids had a daily television program, and it aired all over. So they would get phone calls from all over Michigan, especially, of people who either visited that church or watched it and said, we wish we had a church like that in our community. And so we came down to kind of scout the area because they were getting a lot of calls from Kalamazoo, Battle Creek. And so we would drive down and scout the area. We looked at Battle Creek, we looked at Kalamazoo. It was close to home, so it was an hour away. We thought we kind of knew Kalamazoo, but we thought in my mind, it was like Kalamazoo was like a smaller version of Grand Rapids, which could not have been further from the truth. But we would kind of scout this whole area. And then we would go to Battle Creek. Is it Battle Creek? We didn't feel like that. And one day we were at...
so when we'd go to both places, we'd do the highway.
Expressway,
Yeah, all the way around.
94.
From there.
And so one day we're at Clara's.
Which is still there. Which is amazing.
Still there. It's in Battle Creek.
It's not amazing with the food, but it's amazing it's still there. So.
It's got amazing history.
Yeah.
We were having lunch there, and I think we explained to our waitress, or maybe we asked her, how do we get,
No, she asked us what we were doing.
Yeah, okay. And then we told her we were from Grand Rapids, and somehow we got on the subject of how we drove there. We would take 131 to 94 to 66 up. And she goes, oh, why do you do that? There's like a county road that cuts straight across. It's called M89. And if you do this, and then you cut straight across. So we took that way home, And we came into this middle of nowhere little town called Richland, stoplight, and we're going around the bend. And I particularly felt like the Lord in that moment was like, this is where I want you to start. And I think I like looked to you, kind of turned to you and said something, or was about to say something, and you said, I think that too, right? I can't remember if you said, I think this is where we're supposed to start. And it was like confirmation. We're like, both of us felt like that. In reality, though, it didn't make any sense because Richland was population 1,300 people. Yeah. This is, every church planting boot camp you would ever go to. Yeah. They would tell you that do the opposite. Yeah. But that's how Richland got on the map. And it was strategic because it was between Battle Creek and Kalamazoo. We could reach both those areas. And then we began to search around. And the reason you asked why here? Yeah. It's because that's all there was to rent.
So your first service is where?
Gull Lake Community High School. At that time, it was a high school.
No, it's the middle school.
Yeah. In the cafetorium. Yeah. As you've heard me say, the mascot was the Blue Devils, and over the cafeteria entrance, it said, "Welcome to the Devil's Den."
Yeah, I love that. I should have a picture of that.
We should have.
I don't know if I have a picture of that one.
Yeah, I don't think we realized.
Gosh, I haven't seen these pictures in a long time.
Yeah, it was crazy for me just in my short time here, just looking through some of these photos, thinking, oh wow, this is where it all started. I mean, Radiant now is like, we're in multiple locations, but then you look at this and you see the humble beginnings and the homemade signs and like what it takes to plant a church and to like be faithful for so many years. And so you start in September 1996.
Yep.
Launched. How long are you there? Well, let's actually start. What was the first service like?
Oh, you were in nursery. So the teacher's lounge was the nursery. Yeah. And it was Jane, some pack and plays, our kids, and was there any other kids?
Copenhagen's
maybe theirs.
I was hoping there wouldn't be too many.
So she was.
I don't want to watch all these kids.
The first service began with us meeting with our team up in Grand Rapids. We drove down together, set everything up, and I remember driving into Richland with our little trailer to set up, and you felt like you were invading territory. Yeah. Like you didn't belong, type of thing. But backed up, set up, and you're just anxious. Is anybody going to show up? Is anybody going to come? You have no guarantees. We know like a few of our friends would come. Your mom and dad came, and some things like that. So you know that somebody's going to show up, but in your mind you're like, are 100 people going to show up? Are 20 people going to show up? And we set everything up, and I remember pacing kind of in the back. I changed my clothes. I met Gary Pardo in the bathroom in my underwear because I had worn blue jeans to set up, and then I had to change, and I was caught off guard that anybody was there that early, and so like I'm putting on my suit, and I'm literally on my like whites, and he like walks in, this Gary Pardo, and he's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm like, "Just a second," and I'm putting my suit on and shook his hand. "Hey, welcome to church. I'm the pastor."
Yeah. It's funny. I've heard, and I'd love for you to talk about Pastor Mike Copenhagen in a little bit, but I heard him share once that when he was his first service, was he at the first service or
first or second?
I think it was the first.
Okay. Yeah. And I remember hearing him say, he's like, Pastor Lee was on stage. He's like, but he didn't know you were the pastor at the time, and so he's like waiting for the pastor to come up on stage. He's like, he thought you were just like taking the offering or something.
Pastor.
Yeah, youth pastor. And he was like, wow, this guy's pretty good. Oh, this guy's taking a long time up there. And then it was over. And then he realized, oh, this is the pastor. Because I think you're like 20.
I was
25.
I was 25. Yeah. You were 24. I was 25.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, I mean, that's a lot at 25. I mean, I remember being 25, and that was like just to start that at that age.
72 people showed up. Yeah. 72 people, first Sunday. First song that we sang was by Ross Parsley from New Life Worship, Lord of the Harvest. And the first message I preached was Matthew 9:35 through 37, called Lord of the Harvest.
Wow.
And still remember preached out of the NASB because that was the Bible that I had at that time, and it was surreal to look out and see 72 people.
Yeah.
And then the next week, surreal to look out and see 50.
Yeah.
So really 50 is where we started with about 50 people that were all in. And I remember most of them by name.
Yeah.
But,
and then it'd be funny because it was at the high school. So some Sundays you'd show up and there'd be like a basketball tournament, but we wouldn't know that.
oh, that's
But
right.
there'd be like,
Look at all the cars.
Yeah, and you're like,
oh my gosh.
Revival has broke out.
And then
Yeah.
you walk in and it's like, no, nobody's here for us.
It was a basketball tournament.
It's a tournament.
And it was. And then some Sundays, like in the first year, you'd have blizzards. Like, remember 96 going into 97, that winter was really harsh.
Got it.
So we're still driving.
From Grand Rapids,
All the way down.
131. Yeah.
You guys were still in Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And the church was so small that we would literally call every person
Yeah.
We're having
in the car on our cell phone, my car phone. I had the old bag phone.
Yeah.
On
It cost us
the way to
$200.
church, telling them that we were having church.
Yeah.
You could literally call everybody and say, "No, we're going to do
Yeah,
it."
we're still here.
So that was the beginnings. And you asked how long we were there. I think it was 18 months that
Okay.
we were in the school. 18 months.
18 months. And then in that time, I mentioned Mike Bopenhagen. So you had, I feel like he is,
Key.
a key person in the beginning of Radiant. So I know that Mike was, Pastor Mike was your worship pastor for how many?
17.
Yeah, 17 years.
Mhm.
Yeah, like exactly.
Yeah.
Is it, or like 17 and a half?
Maybe.
Yeah.
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 Wasn't it
Pretty
like
close.
16 years?
I think it's
So,
17.
who was doing worship before that?
Do, do, do.
Was it you?
It was
I heard a rumor. That's why I was curious.
On
I've
Wednesdays.
heard
On
you telling
Wednesdays.
someone, and I was leading worship at the beginning. And I was like,
no.
you were?
Well, so we had a guy from Grand Rapids, from the church we came from, who volunteered to come down and lead worship Sundays. And bless his heart, really great guy, but he didn't want to make a long-term commitment, and it wasn't
Our style.
our style.
Yeah.
Big heart, but not our style. And he came down, and it was challenging.
And he knew that too.
Yeah, and he knew that, and he knew he
Yeah.
didn't want to make a long-term commitment to do that, but he was all in. And at that time, Mike had started coming, Mike and his wife Jenny, and unbeknownst to us, they were like at the end. They were they had been married very young, 18, 19, I think. Gone through some things, a little bit of separation, and decided we're going to give our marriage a second chance, and we're going to go to church. And so they showed up the first Sunday.
Wow.
And so Mike would say that Radiant saved his
Wow.
marriage, but I would say, God orchestrated that,
Yeah.
brought him in, and also positioned him because he would become one of my primary,
Yeah.
probably the primary ministry partnership that we would have, him and his wife Jenny. So I didn't know it, but he was a musician. So after a couple of weeks, he comes
Great
up
musician. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's
We
like,
didn't know.
I want to serve in the church. What can I do? And I'm like, well, we need a bass player. Can you play bass guitar? Because I knew he was a musician. He said, I can learn.
Yeah.
So we bought a bass guitar, gave it to him, and he's a guitarist.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that all works, but he figured
It's
out how to
close
play
enough, yeah.
basic chords. So he was a bass player. And then in the fall of '96, we started doing Wednesday night Bible studies at the Richland Community Center, right on the corner, across from Harding's, that little
Yeah.
white building. So we would come down Wednesday with our kids. Our kids would walk over to Harding's with me. We would buy cookies and punch and set all that up. Had a little boom box, and I would teach. But I was the first worship leader on Wednesday nights, and it was bad.
Would you want to sing like a song? right now?
Yeah, probably not. I want people to listen to the rest of this. But Mike and Jenny started coming, and the guy who was leading on Sundays couldn't.
Yeah.
So I knew Mike was a musician. I said, hey, Mike, next week, bring your guitar, and you play guitar while I sing. We'll just sing a couple songs. So I did that, and then I don't know how long we did that, but I finally I gave him sheet music, and I said, here's a CD, learn the song, here's sheet music. Next week, you're gonna lead worship. And he was so nervous. He was like a cat on a hot tin roof, and before that service, but he led. And what was incredible is, as inexperienced as he was, the presence of God really showed up in a powerful way. And we actually were like this, this is better than what we feel like Sundays is.
Yeah, this is better than Lee singing.
Yeah.
This is-
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and you know what? I'm so glad I didn't have to, because it was not my primary gifting
No, yeah.
at all,
Yeah, with you.
or secondary. But so that from that point on, Mike was our worship leader. And then in January, the other gentleman, he decided he didn't want to continue doing it. So I said, Mike, you're on. So Mike led worship from January '97, and then we hired him full time in 2000. So for 3 years,
Wow.
he worked part time, worked third shift.
Yeah.
He would lead Wednesday nights, Sundays, lead a small group in his home, Tuesday night rehearsal.
Yeah, he's incredible.
I mean,
Drove to Grand Rapids.
drove to Grand Rapids for rehearsal because a lot of our musicians were from Grand Rapids.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he would drive all the way back to Marshall, Michigan to go work third shift.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's
Yeah.
top notch.
he put
I
in
love him,
heart and
yes.
soul
Yeah.
for sure.
So that's like 96. And then I
How
don't,
long is this podcast, Sean?
this
because-
podcast, I think it's like for 4.5 hours.
Yeah, because we're not even out of year one.
Yeah. But year one is so big. I mean, you got to think
Foundation.
of all of those years of even just what you were sharing. And then it's like, okay, let's see what God does.
Yeah.
And in 18 months, you guys grow. And then I know kind of like in 98 is kind of the next kind of phase of how you've come to now our main Richland
Mhm.
location. Can maybe kind of share the story of how did you come to even to that property? Like, how did you even know about that place? Why was that place highlighted to you?
Yeah. Well, I didn't even know it was there for a long time. And I met the pastor. It was an existing church, just the small part of that building that's now our student ministry center. That was freestanding, and they were in the process of adding on the long educational wing.
So that's it.
But I met him at
Pastor's community thing.
a community pastor's clergy meeting, the only one I ever went to. And when I went to it, he and I connected because we were the only two that believed the Bible. So it was like, hey, you're my friend.
Hey, let's be
You're my
friends.
friend. And I asked him where his church was, and he told me, and I'm like, really? Down DE Avenue? So I followed him back to his office to have coffee, and I'm like, wow, I did not know this was even here, because we had,
Here you've been a year and a half.
and we drove around all
Yeah.
over looking
Yeah.
at any space we could.
Yeah.
And so in the course of getting to know him, they were going through a church split. It was a longer story, but he's like, hey, do you want to buy our building? You guys need a building. You ought to buy our building. And I'm like, well, I don't have any money, but how much do you want for it? I think at that time he's asking like 1.1 million for it, and just kind of laughed it off.
Which,
But
it's a lot of money in like
Yeah.
97.
Yeah.
90,
yeah, we had about 85, 90 people. We had
Yeah.
maybe a couple $1,000s in the bank.
Yeah.
You know, we were incrementally growing. It's easy to come into a large church and to look at it and say, well, they've always been large. They've always had resources. That is not the case.
Yeah.
It was small beginnings. It was doing a lot of things wrong. It was God being patient, merciful, and gracious with us. It was people being gracious with us. It was people not being gracious with us, and all the things that go with that. But when he showed me the building and it's like, you ought to buy it, it led to a lot of different conversations between he and I about it, between my board at that time about it. Realizing that we didn't have the history, we didn't have the finances, we didn't have the capability to buy it. But in my heart, it was like, I believe that we're supposed to have this building. And we would drive by it every day. We would walk around it. This is over the course of several months. We'd prayer walk, we'd show up. They would always leave the doors open. So after their service was done, we would bring leaders over. We'd probably illegal. But we would walk in and like look at all the rooms and go, what could we do with these rooms? I mean,
It seems so huge.
it seemed massive.
Huge.
We're like, what would we
You do
do?
with all this space.
And, the sanctuary was a gym. So occasionally they would have open gyms. I would go there and play just so I could get in and look around. And we would go back and forth. He would like, hey, have you thought about it? You ought to talk to banks. And we did. We talked to banks. And we were turned down by almost everybody. Well, everybody. And
then he'd be like, oh, we don't want to move. We're not going to move.
he would, right. He would
Keep
go
going
back and forth.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
well, we're going to stay. We're going to fight it out. And, back and forth. And it was just this up and down thing. And so ultimately one night I had a dream. And in the dream, I was sitting behind his desk in what would become my office. It was his office, except now I'm sitting behind it. And the pastor of it was called the chapel. He came in the dream, and he wrote down on a piece of paper $635,000, and he slid it across the table. I looked at it, and we shook hands. I woke up, had the dream, had it, and I shared it with Jane. I'm like, craziest dream. Went to my office, and at that time, I had one other staff person. It was a lady. I was in my 20s. She was in her 50s. Kind of like an older, almost like a mom figure, but office manager, accountant. She had years of ministry background. Her name's Linda. And I told Linda the dream, and she's like a faith prayer intercessor from the South. So she's like, honey, that church is ours. Yeah. And so I told her the dream. And while I'm telling her the dream, I see out of the corner of my eye out the window, that pastor pulled up in front of our rented office space. And I said, get out of there. And when he came in and he sat down, he said, last night we had a board meeting, and we have to sell the building. We don't want it to go to a school or a health club. We want it to stay in the kingdom. We're all agreed. We want you to buy it. If you can give us what we owe on it plus a little extra, we will sell it to you. Here's our final number. And I'm like, well, how much is it? And he said $635,000.
That's insane.
And when you have something like that, you just here's the invitation, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's not like, let me think about it. It's like
I shook his hand. I said, yes, we'll do it. He left. Linda and I danced around. I called Jane. I'm like, I think we just bought a building. But we didn't have any money.
Yeah.
No. Can I back up real quick?
You can do anything
because before that dream, though, when he came and he told us the time before that, probably a couple weeks earlier, that they decided to stay and that all the talks were off. I came home depressed, and Jane had been home with the kids. I think it was just Ashley and Jared at that time. You were pregnant with Tiff. I came home and I told Jane, and here's one of the things that people don't see a lot of times is that when I'm the leader and I'm up front, they see me and they think, oh, Pastor Lee he's always got faith. He never doubts. He always knows exactly what's supposed to do. But they don't understand the gift of compliment that Jane is to me. Because in that moment I came home, I was completely discouraged. Yeah. I think I'd even stopped and bought earbud on VHS. I just wanted to go home and put it on so the kids would have something to do.
Oh, and that was your guilty pleasure.
No, it wasn't for me.
I'm just gonna watch Airbud one more time.
That will encourage me so much.
I mean, it's a fantastic movie.
It is cute.
I think I brought home Doritos, thus the fat boy picture. But when I came home, I remember in our little house on Roseland, and we were downstairs where the TV room was. I remember exactly where she'd be sitting on a black couch, right on the end. I was sitting over here, and I was discouraged. I just said, I don't know. We're never going to get that building. I don't know what we're going to do. And I'll never forget. Do you remember what you said? You remember how old I was? You don't remember what you said? I just remember her saying she had faith in the right moments. And she just said, Lee, we're not going to be discouraged because that building is ours. I don't know how, but God's going to make a way. Yeah. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that building is ours. And that infused me with faith in that moment. And, throughout the journey of all the years of Radiant and lots of different moments like that has been the greatest gift of Jane in our partnership. I'm the upfront preacher person, but she is, the Bible says 2 are better than 1, and a strand of 3 is not easily broken. And that's been our story. There's been a lot of strength. When she needs it, I'm that, and definitely for me. So I think that's an important part to make sure that that's in the story, lest people think, oh,
just try
you never had a speed bump, because I really did. I was really discouraged about that. But so we got it. Ended up, I could tell, a billion stories about that, but ultimately we couldn't find any financing for it. Through one of our board members who graduated Western in accounting, he said, I'm coming down to have lunch with my former roommate. You should come meet him. He's in commercial finance. I said, great. So I came down and I threw my pitch at him, and he said, how come you don't have a bank? And I said, well, we've been turned down. And he said, I'm Catholic. I don't know much about churches like yours, but something tells me everything you just told me about what God has put in your heart is going to happen, needs to happen. And I can approve up to $500,000 on just my signature. Will that help you? Yeah. And I said, that will help, but I need 600,000. And he said, I'll give you the 5 and I'll go into committee and I will vouch for you. And so it was another miracle of how we got the financing for it. Then our church, that was made up of about 100 people, nobody of means. We were all young families.
Richland's not a wealthy area at that time.
No.
We had like 4 weeks to raise above and beyond just the tithe.
Yeah.
I think it was $22,000 or $23,000 and some change. And so people like sold their cars, people had garage sales, people cashed in, their 401ks that they had just started contributing to. I mean, it was everything. And we took an offering on a Sunday, and it was literally, I think we needed like $22,800 and something. And we raised like $100 more than what we needed.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
and then we closed on it the next day, moved in on Tuesday, cleaned it on Thursday, and had church on, I think it was April 18th, 1998. And she's good with dates.
Yeah.
And that was how we got into that.
Wow.
It was a miracle.
Yeah.
It was nothing short of a miracle.
That's incredible. And so, I mean, that obviously is like this next huge chapter of just faith, like, I don't know how it's going to happen. And I love that you shared about Jane, of just, that having that person next to you to help you in those moments, and I know in my own personal life as well, it's like with me and my wife, it's sometimes one of you just doesn't see it clearly, and the other person be like, hey,
right,
we're going to do this. And so it's, I love that. So kind of after that, we're kind of now hitting into like probably like 2000s. 2000s is kind of like an explosion of just growth and other things that kind of start to happen as far as like, I know that I think we planted some churches in there and things. I don't know if you want to share some about what happened kind of in that time frame.
Yeah, I mean, we always knew that, at least I always knew that one of the things that we would do would be help other people do what we did, or help them plant churches. I didn't like premeditate it. It was just in my heart. And I think that's part of how God has wired me, is to be a champion of other people to plant churches. I just believe in the church. And just like Lauren had inspired me and I did it, and then I wanted to help others. So I think in 1998 or 99, the lady who was in my front office, Linda, her and her husband Doral, they were our first elders. And they felt called to go back to their hometown, which was Waterville. And so we sent them, and they planted River of Life Church. And then in 2003, guy who had been our youth pastor for a couple of years, that we knew from back in the Kansas City days, Clint and Mary Sprague, they felt called to move back to Kansas City to plant Life Mission Church in Olathe. So we were able to help them do that. And it was just kind of the beginnings. We didn't really have a plan to do it. It was just as it popped up. That's what you do. But and in there was Y2K, so that was fun to pastor through. We had people like
how did the people of Richland, Michigan respond?
Well, I don't know how everybody did, but some people planted dirt in their basement to grow potatoes. And
we had nothing, so if
we had nothing.
We would have been in trouble.
Literally, we had nothing. If the power really did go off, everything, we wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
It was not because we had great faith. It was because we.
I mean, it's interesting. You say that is it's like we had nothing. I mean, it's people can look at like large churches today and be like, oh, they can go weeks and weeks through hardship because they just have so much money. But I mean, people sold cars and things to make just to get in the building, but you still have to go the next week and the next week. I mean, what was that like? I mean, that faithfulness had to probably be like every single week, right?
Yeah, there's no online giving. You know what I mean? So people didn't show up. You didn't get their tithe because nobody's making up a tithe.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
Most people aren't.
Few.
So, I was always like, oh, they're not there.
So we had a motto: we never cancel church. Yeah. Part of that is because we're just stubborn and somebody's going to show up. And part of that is we were living, a lot of people know what it is to live week to week, paycheck to paycheck. As a church, that's how we were.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because we were irresponsible. It's just because we didn't have any money.
Right.
I, for the first several years, I taught young adults up in Grand Rapids. I taught in a Bible college in Grand Rapids to supplement income because, the church couldn't pay me very much. And one of our priorities was, as we were hiring staff in the early days, is we had a deep conviction that we wanted to make sure that the people on our staff were taken care of. And so it wasn't like, oh, look at us. It was just like, hey, we would much rather have this person on staff and this person on staff than to not have them and us to get paid more. So that was part of it. And we had building costs and different things. So there was not a lot of money to go around. Yeah. Now, we had a priority, and the priority was missions. And so from the very beginning, we had made a commitment that the very first check we ever wrote, check 1001 was given to Latin American missions before we paid anybody, rented anything, purchased anything. And we did that as a priority. And then from that, we supported missionaries in several different places in the early days. So we were never going to touch that. That was a priority. Yeah. But yeah, we lived week to week, tithe to tithe as a church for many, many years.
So the next kind of chapter I see is, you're in the Richland building in what we now call the old sanctuary, but it's going into it's kind of the new sanctuary build. It's the kids spaces. And that was kind of like 2006, right? And so
that's when we moved in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Into the new.
Yeah.
Where we are now.
Yeah. And actually,
I found, I think, a couple photos of kind of that. Some of this is, I think, the
drive. Yep.
This is like the student.
Look at the chairs.
Oh yeah, this is
wow. And we moved. That was before we got the upholstered chairs, the purple chairs. Remember?
And it looked like a sauna.
It does kind of have a sauna feel to it.
Yeah, the old knotty pine. Yeah, green. The carpet was wow. The windows. Yeah.
Wow.
So what was, I know a little bit, so I'm kind of asking you, like, there was the invitation of God
Look at that, 1998, the year of building. That was when we moved down.
Yeah.
The invitation of God to expand on the campus, to build the sanctuary and the kids spaces. And I think the Lord was speaking to you. This is kind of before like the economy kind of took a nosedive. And so but the Lord spoke something to you, put a demand on your faith, and you responded. And then maybe you could share a little bit about what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot to it, but we had gone through a capital campaign in 94, 95 called Chapter 2. Our goal was to raise $2.5 million over 3 years. We ended up raising 1.1. Which
close, but
we were so close.
It's like playing basketball. It's kind of like, whoa.
That was, and we had done a big event. It was really, again, discouraging. You're like, ugh. And Jane's dad had been diagnosed in 2004, correct? Three. Good job. With cancer. And so 2003, 2004 was a really painful year for our family and for the church. We were growing. We were in 3 services on Sunday mornings. And I think even for a while, we had a Saturday night that we did. So we were running out of room, and we knew that the next phase was we needed to raise money to build a new sanctuary. And we're walking through her father's illness. He had come alive in our church. Both mom and dad had really come alive in the church, and her brother had gotten saved, John. Everybody knows John Zondervan, and his wife Kendra had gotten saved in her church. So there was a lot of really good things going on in the family, but it was secretly really painful. Yeah. He ended up passing away in April of 2004, suddenly in surgery in Chicago. And so the combination of that, and then the going through the capital campaign and not raising as much as, I just felt like maybe we're not supposed to do this. And again, here's where a mentor comes in. I called Pastor Lauren Covarrubias, and I just shared with him. I said, hey, I'm really nervous about I'm really nervous of biting a massive new mortgage payment and a building. I know that we need it. We need the space. We're kind of in that spot where we have to take a pretty major step in order to continue to grow.
Yeah.
But we have to have a pretty big financial miracle to make it happen. And I'm nervous, like we didn't get the campaign money. I just feel like, everything, maybe we just need to settle down and hunker down for a little bit. And he said to me, I feel like the Lord wants you to know that the harvest is coming. Build the barn because the harvest is coming. And that to me infused me with faith again. And so we decided to move forward with it. And we began, I think right here, you can see the beginning of construction. We pulled the trigger on it. And it was, I think the whole project, the sanctuary was 3.5. And then we did some renovations on the old. So the total package was going to be $5 million. Well, that was, I think at that time, maybe our budget was $1 million. Yeah. Which is a lot of money, right? But the project was 5 times what our annual budget was. But we stepped out in faith and we did it. And it ended up costing more.
Like always.
Yeah.
Like always. But the next year, after we moved into it in 2006. The next year, the economy began to take a nosedive. By the time we moved into it, interest rates had gone up, values had gone down. If we would have waited a year, instead of it costing 3.5, it would have cost over 6.
Yeah.
And we would never have built it. We probably would have still, even to this day, we wouldn't have grown enough and we would have been in the old. So it was that step of faith that we did it. And when we moved into it, our first Sunday, we had 1,300 people that showed up. And we were averaging like 8 to 9 in the old. Yeah. So it was a big jump. And again, it was going to be a battle to stay in it, because
so the next week.
Week after week. And, one of the tricky things was as we got in and then the bank came and said, well, it doesn't appraise now. At what we thought it was going to, because values just went down because the recession happened. So now not only are you going to have to make a mortgage payment, you're going to have to make a principal payment. Well, we were already stretched. Remember, what were we believing God for every week?
Well, at one point it was 20, but before that I think it was like 12.
Yeah, it's like we were praying for $12,000 a week. Yeah. And our mortgage payment on the new Richland combined was $28,000. So we needed like 2 weeks worth to pay for the building. And
we had staff.
We had our staff and missions and utilities and stuff that you don't plan on. So, it was stressful. And then our bank is like, you're going to have to make an additional $20,000 a month principal. Well, we couldn't. Yeah. And that was when God reminded me of a business card I had of a man I met called the ECCU, Evangelical Christian Credit Union, that I had met. We had considered doing it with them, but their interest rates were higher. But what I remember him saying is that the appraisals on buildings, they did on a national level, not on a regional, which means the values would go up. So we called him, they came, did the whole thing. We refinanced through them and avoided having to pay all those extra fees. It was just
nothing in Richland to appraise it to. So it,
it
was like,
that's right.
Yeah.
So at this time, is the name now Radiant Church at this time? Because I know you said when we started it was Resurrection Life.
Resurrection Life Church Richland.
Yeah.
No, we waited a year. It was 2007 that we changed the name. 2007 from Resurrection Life Church to Radiant Church. We felt like moving into a building and changing the name all at the same time was a little too much. So we moved in first, then we gave it a year. And then we announced the name change in 2007.
So what did that do in you two and in the church, having the change of name, because it's not just let's just throw a fresh coat of paint on. I mean, there's something significant about a name.
Right.
Well, what do you think from your perspective? What was that like?
I just remember us, and I honestly don't even remember exactly why we decided to change. Is it more because we wanted a separation of identity from Granville? Because we were Little Res or Big Res. I was like, we don't want to be that anymore.
That's a big reason.
Right. And so we were throwing out names and but we kind of wanted to keep it RL
Yeah, we were trying to, remember we were like Life Point.
Yeah, like
Or
trying to keep
Life
RLC,
Church.
you know what I mean? Like this. And then
Yeah.
one day we're like, Radiant. And we're like, gosh, that sounds really kind of cool.
Because remember, Isaiah 60
Yes.
was the first prophetic word we had
that's
been
right.
given by our
Johnny,
friend
right.
Johnny Varican.
Mm-hmm. Back in the old building.
Right, in the very beginning, first year.
It's a snowstorm.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a good snowstorm. And, you know, that became kind of a prophetic plumb line for us. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon you. Behold, darkness covers the earth, gross darkness the people, but the glory of the Lord shall be seen upon you. And then you jump down verse 5, and it says, and you shall see and be radiant, and your heart shall swell with joy. So in all of the names that we were looking at, I think we had actually...
We had
like,
thrown out. I mean, they were.
Yeah, we had crazy ones. And then I don't know how it happened, but let's go back to what are the prophetic words that have been spoken over us. And Isaiah 60 was the one. And we looked at that and we're like, you shall see and be radiant. And at that time, I'd never heard of a church named Radiant. I was like, wow, Radiant. I like that. Yeah. And we prayed into it. Remember we were watching a conference on TV.
Yeah, we won't say. And the pastor said.
The pastor was like, he was prophesying about the church, big C, of the future. And we were in the middle of like talking about, is this maybe, are we supposed to name it Radiant?
We were sitting in bed watching.
Yeah, on Hemmel.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I see a glorious church. I see a radiant church. Yeah. And we're like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
we landed on Radiant.
So, I mean, Radiant now, I'm curious where in the process as well, one of the big things about Radiant is we call it a praying and worshiping church, like a spirit and truth church. Do you feel like that was, was that from the beginning? Would that kind of weave its way in, midway through? Where did that concept come from?
Very early on, even before we planted, sorry, I'm messing with my microphone. When we were in the prep phase, we knew we were going to plant the church, but go ahead.
No, that's too long of a story, so
Oh.
I'll go to that one. But yeah.
Do it.
No,
do
no,
it.
no.
Is it a good story?
Well, it's
though?
a good story.
I love good stories.
We were before that spring before the summer that we planted. He calls me up at work. So no.
No, this is a long
Yeah,
time before
never
that.
mind. I got my dates off. So
Wow.
well, why was that? Oh, because that's how we ended up not going.
To the Philippines? Is that what you're? Listen, it's like flip B side material. When we were newly married, I'd gone to lunch with Pastor
And I'm
Dwayne.
like,
This is like the first year.
Working at Bum Basket.
Right, she's
making
pregnant with
$3
Ashley.
an hour.
Right, and we're attending and we're kind of volunteering at the church, and I wanted to be in full-time ministry. We loved missions, and so I go out to pastor. Well, we kind of loved missions. I loved missions. I love the idea of missions.
To missions. To get
But
missions.
I go out to lunch, and somehow the pastor talked me, and he's like, "You should go to the Philippines and be a missionary." So I called her from a
At
payphone.
work.
Hey, guess
Answer
what?
the
We're
phone.
moving to the Philippines. We're going to be
I'm like,
missionaries in the Philippines.
Oh.
But that has nothing to do with a praying and worship.
Okay. I was thinking we were on the beach at my parents' cottage.
Yeah.
But was that
That was Watchman Nee book.
Was that-
the book
was
called
I
Concerning Our
pregnant?
Missions?
with Ashley?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
No, you were pregnant. You were pregnant with Ashley. The praying and worshiping part though came. Oh, I know why you made that connection, because I had dropped you off at your mom and dad's cottage.
And driving home.
I was driving home. It was like June.
But I had both kids then. I
Good.
wasn't pregnant.
Yes.
So we were starting the church.
Yes.
Yes.
So it was June 1996. I'm driving home, and if you've ever started anything, there's an anxiety on the inside of you. Is it going to work? And I was praying, talking to the Lord in the car, and just like, I don't know how to do this. God, you're going to have to help me. I distinctly remembering like thinking to myself, I'm no Lauren. And it was one of the really most powerful moments with the Lord. I felt like God's presence was in the car with me, and I heard him speak the phrase, build a praying and a worshiping church. And you'll strengthen the body to reach the world. Build a praying and a worshiping church. And I wrote that down in my Franklin planner when I got home, and that became the core of our church. And it's interesting because prayer had prayer had been a deep part of my connection with the Lord throughout all the years. It was something that I had been discipled in, something that I was very passionate about. I read a lot of books on it. It was a core conviction of mine. And so when I got that word from the Lord, that became kind of a non-negotiable.
And we have prayer meetings at the little whatever.
Right from the beginning, the ministry center.
At night.
Yeah.
One night and Saturdays.
Yeah. So that was where the praying and worshiping church came from. The spirit and truth part, I think, is just over the years as I've tried to identify what is unique about Radiant and the DNA. And what's unique to me, I'm a Bible guy, but I'm also a Holy Spirit guy. And I've never really felt at home in a camp. Like if I'm in the extreme charismatic, quote, charismatic spirit side of things, I always am a little weirded out, because it's not that I don't believe God does those things, but I just feel like I'm on a trip to the carnival and it's just gone too far and there's no guardrails. So then I'll think, well, maybe I'm more of like a Bible exposition guy, and I'll go in those environments where theology and Bible and text, and I just feel like it's dry as a desert and there's no work of the Holy Spirit. So over the years, we've tried to put a phrase together that expresses what we believe God's called not only us to do, but also to help other churches and other leaders and help establish in the body of Christ. And that's where the phrase spirit and truth comes from, because it encapsulates both of those things.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I've seen it since I first got here. And so to hear that it was actually like from even before the church is just a beautiful thread that's carried up until today.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, it's in our mission statement. It's like what we do. And there's things that are like further down the story that has started, carried from that like 1996 to all the way to here, which is amazing. And so trying to hit some of these, I know we've been talking for a while, but
we're going to have to do a part 2, aren't we?
Oh, well, we'll split it into 2. I mean, people love it. This is great. This is like, and so I just want to make sure you guys aren't going to like Jane's not going to sneak out on me here. And so
I might.
Yeah, you can. And then I have some real, if he sneaks out, I have some real questions.
Maybe I'll stick around.
I want to go back to some
She's got
things.
some great stories.
Yeah. So now we kind of enter into, I'm kind of calling chapter 3. It's like the start of, kind of the multi-site. We have the launching of our Portage location. We have more of the building of the apostolic that we're kind of calling as like the
external reach.
Yeah, the network and Arise Shine conference and things like that. So why Portage? Like we were in Richland, and then all of a sudden Portage, people that don't know Southwest Michigan, I mean, it's not like right next to it. I mean, it's kind of down and over. And so why were you thinking
I think
Portage?
we're like, why Portage? Because we're like, why did God choose Richland?
Well, there were many years we're like,
maybe we should ask why Richland.
It's like, why Richland?
It's like, God, why did you stick us in Richland?
Yeah.
I think I had it in my heart when we moved down here. Part of the reason why we went to Richland is because it was a regional, besides the Lord calling us, it was a regional, you could reach Battle Creek, Kalamazoo, a little bit North County. And we've always been a regional church. And so I think with that in mind, it's like, it wasn't never how can we just reach Richland? It was always how can we reach Southwest Michigan?
Yeah.
And as Radiant began to grow, the larger you get, the greater your broadcast signal is as far as just influence. So we began to draw people from an hour away, Indiana and Marshall and Jackson and Grand Rapids and Portage. And I think at that time we began to recognize that Portage was a harvest field. It was the fastest growing segment of the county that we were in. It's where a lot of young families were. It was a lot of unreached people. And there wasn't necessarily a church like Radiant that was there. And we had a lot of people that were driving from there, but they would say, we love it, we just wish it was closer.
And even like Matawan and Dowagiac and all that, even more west.
Yeah, exactly. Vicksburg and all those areas. So then we began to, it was kind of the onset of multi-site in general, the idea that you could do one church in more than one location. So, we tried Portage, and originally in 2009, we set up tear down in a school, saying, what if, let's try it. And we did it, and it was successful from that standpoint in that we transplanted some people there from that area, went for about 9 months, but it never really felt like Radiant.
Yeah.
It was always kind of JV. I called it JV.
Yeah.
It was like varsity and junior varsity. And so we recognized that we didn't know what we didn't know. It was going to take more staffing, more money, more technology to really do it right. So we pulled it all back, which was that was a big decision.
Yeah.
But we said, well, we're going to consolidate. We're not ready. And then that kind of set the stage for the next several years of continuing. Will you hold on to that? I had it in my heart. Just, I don't know why, but we were supposed to do multi-site. We were supposed to do one church across multiple locations. And definitely the other side for me was Portage, or the west side of Kalamazoo, kind of in that area. And, 2009 to 2010, it would be another 7 years before we would revisit it.
But I think the Lord knew, because the staff, like you guys coming and Caleb coming, and just,
which that's a pretty big part of the story as well.
Yes.
Right. The staff coming into
the huge surge of strength and of high level leaders that came in all in a big kind of wave. It was like a tsunami of strength to Jane and I, because we had great leaders, but like by then Mike and Jenny had moved to Jackson. We had planted them, Radiant Church Jackson. Jerry Tice had gone to Ludington. Jeremy Brown had gone to Ann Arbor. So a lot of our high level leaders we planted. Yeah. And it left a backdraft of, hey, we need an infusion of strength. And we definitely cannot launch another location without that. So through, just the sovereign hand of the Lord, all of a sudden, God brings the surge. Caleb and Rachel Culver moved from Colorado to join us. And then a lot of people that were connected to them joined them. Yeah. And we found ourselves almost in that exact same season thinking about Portage again. And just out of nowhere, we get contacted by the church in Portage that had gone through a crisis of leadership. And they reached out to us because they knew that we were looking over on that side of town. And they were like, look, we have a building and no leaders, and we're in crisis. We're not going to make it. And you guys have strength and leadership and a vision, but you don't have a building. Can we work together? And ended up becoming an adoption. We adopted that church, pulled them in, which was an interesting process. It was hard for them. It was hard for us. Yeah. But God's grace was on it. And we made a place at the table. They came here for like 6 weeks, learned our culture. We flipped that building, opened it up on Easter Sunday, 2018. Had 2,300 people show up for Easter. And it's continued to just be a strong expression of Radiant. And it really feels like in our hearts what Radiant is supposed to feel like. It's unique because Portage is a unique community, but every time we go there, it feels like, no, this is us, just like being here at Richland feels like us. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I know that that's, not the only one. Like you even mentioned we have quite a few church plants now, but then we have our locations that are kind of, it's, one church, many rooms, as we kind of say. So there's the growth, and then all of a sudden, I would fast forward us to year 2020, which was a very interesting year for everybody.
Yeah, what happened in 2020?
That was 5 years ago today.
Today.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
It feels like, at one point for me, I was just thinking about this. It was like, it feels like a lifetime ago, but also feels like it was only like a few months ago. Like weird? It's just like because it's only 5 years, but it's like so much has changed in our world after 2020.
I feel Kalamazoo changed.
Yeah. So I moved here in 2018 and to work at Radiant. And so those 2 years, it felt like we were just like, we are growing. We're taking ground. Like we're doing work for the kingdom. You're seeing the city. You're seeing people. You're seeing community. And then 2020, like all over the nation, it was just like, well, now we're doing something different. It's like for something completely different now. And so, what was that like for you? Like for you guys, as 1996, where you see it going, you have all these moments of invitations from the Lord, the seeing God's miracle, and then you come up to something that's completely unknown. I mean, there's no church planner strategy for global pandemics, and so it's like, what What was that like for you guys?
I have to admit that Easter, the first Easter, I was kind of like, this is a bit of a gift. Because
the introvert.
Yeah.
She's like, I love
I
COVID.
didn't have to do 20 services. It was so nice.
Yeah. We had like one online.
Can't we have another pandemic?
No, and I would never. But
I'm glad you.
yeah, but for me, I was like, oh my gosh, we can be home and not have to go to church. It's terrible. But then I got old quick after that.
Our daughter was supposed to graduate that spring, so she came home, and us three, we were. It was supposed to be 15 days.
Yeah.
Right.
To flatten the curve.
In Michigan, we had a shutdown for 15 days.
Right,
yeah.
and then Richland kept it closed for
to 15 weeks.
Yeah.
Basically.
And then after that, it was even like a quarter of.
This percentage you can be in, and
you're trying to be a good neighbor to people around us. It was just a weird.
Yeah, being a large church in the city, you know that you're a flashpoint. So at first it's like nobody, like you said, there's no textbook. Here's how you handle a pandemic. You're just like, none of us knew really what we know now about COVID and governments and stuff. We were just all like confused. It was like you spun us around and nobody had equilibrium. So I remember having a executive team meeting on Thursday. Like, what do we do? Do we shut down? Yeah. And I think we decided, no, we're not shutting down. And then on Friday, it was like, no, you have to shut down. So we did pre-recorded.
We had that first service.
What's that?
We probably spread COVID that.
Probably.
Edit that. But we did.
Super
we
spread.
We had that.
That's
small
right.
service.
That's
which
right.
ended up being, do you remember that? Like everyone's up front worshing and all that. And I'm like, oh my
we
God.
Definitely spread it.
We're all taking communion together.
Here we go.
Everybody hug somebody. So eventually we did go into, the lockdown, and then it was like interesting how long is this going to last? Yeah. And so we're pre-recording services. We immediately shifted gears. This is one of the things that I'm glad that we did. We didn't have a lot of direction to go on, but what we knew was who we are, which is a praying church. So I think it was Caleb who actually said, what if we shifted our prayer meeting to 8 a.m., broadcast it, and every day, and
because we were already doing prayer meetings,
but we weren't broadcasting. Yeah. And we were doing prayer meetings, but it was like this could be a way to kind of encourage people, connect with people, pastor people while they're in their homes. And so I made a commitment. I said, I'll lead the prayer meeting every morning until lockdown's over. I thought 2 weeks, and it was 15 weeks. It was the middle of July. And that became, I think, it was really interesting because we were on Facebook Live and on YouTube. We had thousands of people that were joining us every single morning for prayer. And we would sneak into the upper room because you weren't supposed to be on the roads, but because it was work related, we go in and I'll never forget, like JoJo was there, Moose was there, Caleb was there, I'm there. I ran like pro presenter a couple times from the back, and it would just be a handful of us. But every day, Monday through Friday, we did our prayer meeting. And that became a source of strength. And it drew both a lot of our people and a lot of other people to us in that moment as we were giving leadership. So I'm glad that we did that. But, COVID was tough because every decision I made and every decision every leader made during that period of time in churches, you were going to offend and irritate 30% of your church. Yeah. So if you stayed locked down, half the church was mad at you. If you came back, half the church was mad at you. Masks, no masks. What percentage? Do you have social distancing space? Did you have kids ministry? There was nothing you could do. So if you're driven by making people happy, it was a terrible, terrible season. Yeah. But if you are sensitive and just to the direction of the Lord, that's all you could rely on is, look, I'm praying, I've got wise counsel, this is what we're doing. And you just had to plow through it. And it was going to take you a couple years to figure out who stayed, who left, who deconstructed, who moved to a different city, who moved to a different church, who walked away from the faith, who got saved during this time. And it was like, I don't think it was really till 2002, 2022, 2023 till we really figured out where we were at.
Yeah.
And, it took us a while to even get back to where we were pre-COVID.
Yeah.
We figured out a lot of same numbers, but different people.
Yeah.
And the world was different. I don't think it'll ever be the same. For some people, it really drove them in their faith to get deeper, to go further in God. And others, it really spun them off.
Yeah. And it's interesting. We had to really figure out, who are we as a church? Like, are we going to change who we are? Because there was so much that was built from the early foundations. And then because the world is responding differently, do we have to change who we are? Or how do we meet them? And that was, I remember going up right before COVID. We had high attendance. We had multiple services. We were looking at launching another location. There's just so much that we were about to do. And then all of a sudden, and it has been years of just figuring out.
Even still trying to figure,
Yeah.
And in the middle of that, though, one of the cool things is we had just gotten the prayer room in downtown.
Yeah.
But it was one part of the space in that whole building.
Which is another, another miracle story. I mean, that's
it was a miracle how we were led to that prayer room. A RSW student whose mom and dad had started a recording business. Dad tragically dies. She knows that we're looking for a building, tells the partners. The partners are wanting to sell. They reach out to us, no realtors. We go and look at it. There's a storage space that's 4,000 square foot next to the recording studio. They want out. We buy it. Nobody knows. So we move in just before COVID.
Yeah.
Start making plans, the Radiant City Vision. We had just done dinners there where we're again in a capital campaign. We're talking about, again, renovating and finishing the prayer room and multiple locations and, trying to raise, I think $7 million over 3 years.
Yeah.
Week 2 of that campaign, COVID hits. We're the only church in America, and we know this because Equip told us who was helping us, John Maxwell's organization, that we are the only church that did a capital campaign in the middle of COVID. And we actually raised and fulfilled our goal. That's unheard of, but we did it by Zoom.
Yeah.
Radiant people, if you guys are watching, you shock us and amaze us at your generosity.
Even they had no idea what was going to happen.
Right.
I remember in that campaign service of just of meeting with our church, and it's like, hey, we can't even guarantee 6 months from now of what's going to happen in the world.
Yeah, right.
And people were like, but we believe in God, and we believe what He said he's going to do.
It astounded us. And not only did we do the campaign, because we were told, you'll fail. But we felt like it was the Lord. And so we continued on, and our goal was 7. We surpassed that. And then over the next 3 years, that plus came in. And not only did we get the prayer room renovated, but in the course of COVID, it just is just like God, again, the miracle. The other tenants in the building are wanting to get out of the building because of COVID. And so they're coming to us privately and basically selling their parcels or their space or their offices to us at prices that
pennies to the dollar.
Pennies to the dollar compared to what they should be and what they would have been in any other season.
On the mall, downtown,
And basically we got 95% of the building throughout COVID with no realtors, no realtor fees, pennies on a dollar. It was a miracle story.
Yeah.
What is now the downtown city center with Match Head, the prayer room, the schools, RSW, RSM, and our central offices, the recording studio, creative studio, all this stuff.
And now a Sunday morning location.
Yeah. And a Sunday morning, our third location, which is fine. It's doing so well. But that was all in the middle of a famine. God did a miracle again.
Yeah. It's crazy. And it's funny, I want to call back to, as we're kind of ending this story, because we're kind of now up like around 2025,
Ding, landing gear.
Landing gear is, you had mentioned the very beginning when you said you planted in Richland, you're like, if you look at any church strategy book, this is not what you do.
Right.
And then COVID happens, and the thing that you had said, I remember hearing you say this, is that if we could keep going and we could follow like a church planning formula and we can grow larger, but you had a clear vision from the Lord that prayer was to be at the center, and that Psalm 132 reality. And so what you guys decided to do was, we're going to build a prayer room in the center of the city.
Yeah.
We're gonna create a resting place for the Lord. And,
Yeah.
and so why was that important to you? Like what you didn't follow any other model for growth. There was so much unknown, at that point, but you responded in that way. And can you maybe share why you chose to do that?
I'll go back to something Lauren Covarrubias told me years ago. He said, if you go the way of the Spirit, this is what the Lord had told him. If you go the way of the Spirit, the Lord promises to give you an inheritance that other people only wish they could have. And I really believe that there's things that you need to do that are strategic. There's things that are just common sense, but then there comes moments where you just have to follow the leading of the Holy Spirit. And it had been on my heart, the dream of having an engine room, a furnace room of prayer, where it's just dedicated to prayer and worship from the heart of our city, which is such a contested territory. We don't see in the Spirit. We see the natural reality. We may get glimpses of what we think the spiritual reality is like. But I think if we could see what downtown Kalamazoo is like in the Spirit, the terrain, the topography, it was an area that in my heart is like, I want God to have an inheritance here. I want him to have a place for his presence, for him to be worshiped from the heart of the city, not from around the city, but from the heart of the city. I remember a pastor from the city years ago when we first moved here. He told me, he said that the city of Kalamazoo has never had a spirit-filled expression of a church in its city limits that has survived. It's always in the suburbs. And I think it's because of the spiritual dynamics, the strongholds, the principalities, the powers that have controlled the city for a long time and are connected to a lot of things, darkness. And for us to plant a flag in the heart of the city and say, no, this is going to be dedicated to the extreme of worship, intercession, prayer, training up next generation of missionaries, pastors, and leaders, and to produce media that's going to go around the world and worship that's going to go around the world. To me, it is just like it's putting an ark in the center of the city for God to rest upon. And that's why it was significant to me, even before we ever did anything else. If we never do another location, we may, I think it's in God's heart, it's in my heart, it might be the next generation of leaders, who knows? But if we never did that and we did this, I know that I've done what I was called to do. Instead of if I didn't do that and I leveraged all that to just grow and to have another building or to thousands more people, and I didn't do this, I would feel like I neglected what I was called to do.
Yeah. Wow. A final question I have for you guys is, we've told a lot of stories, and I know there's probably a dozen more that we haven't even shared yet, and hopefully
Jane's got more than that.
Jane's got plenty, and
you need to do a whole podcast on her, the X-Files.
That's actually a great idea.
Oh, sorry, no, I take that back.
It's you guys have had so many opportunities to respond to the Lord, to show faithfulness, to see God's breakthrough, and that comes a gift from just time with the Lord, relationship with the Lord. So what is something that you would share with somebody in their 20s who hasn't had that time or experience yet to see those things, who's facing situations like an unknown situation, and maybe the Lord is calling them or trying to give them an invitation, but it's scary, it's unknown. And so what would you share with that person if you had a chance to speak with them?
I think I would share that the unknown is almost the beautiful part of it, because it's that faith, like the quote that you said early on, that he always meets you.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you knew every step, you could make that decision of, I want to go or I don't want to go, because you know every step. It's like, well, this is going to be harder, this or that. But if you don't know and you're just trusting the Lord, it's like he's in the boat with you, carrying you through those rough waters that you think, in the natural, if I had done this on my own, I wouldn't have done, because I would have drowned. You know what I mean? But he carries you, and it's just like, just take that step, and he's so faithful. Even if it doesn't look exactly like you think it's going to look, it's exactly what he wants.
That's beautiful.
So
that's really That's really good. I can't say it any better than that, other than to just add on to that thinking of what Paul tells Timothy. He says that even when we are faithless, he remains faithful.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we were unqualified to do this, other than we just said yes. And we trusted God along the way. And there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that go into that. If it was all reliant on us and our ability, our qualification, this would not have worked.
Yeah.
But in every moment, there was always a gap between our capability, what we were able to do, and what needed to be done. And God in his faithfulness always fills that gap.
Yeah.
And to remember too, that he fills that gap, because there's so many different seasons of that time where you could be hurt by people or offended or whatever. And it was always like, okay, I'm choosing to let that go and to walk in love and to pray and, just different, where it would have just been easy to be like, I'm done. Quit. This is too
How
hard.
many times did we quit? Nobody
A
knew.
lot
We
of
quit.
times.
There were a lot of
yeah.
Fridays.
Yeah. But just to keep your heart,
Yeah.
it keeps you praying for people and keeps you just focused on that too.
He
that
really
he's
is
bigger.
faithful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's bigger. He's
His
faithful.
vision.
Yeah, he's faithful. Amen. Well, Pastor Lee, Pastor Jane, thank you so much just for taking the time just to share, go down memory lane, share
fun.
these stories.
Fun.
But I mean, you guys, I just want to honor you just for truly, I know I've said it a million times, but I truly do believe that you guys are a picture of faithfulness, of responding to God's invitation, to believing that he will give breakthrough, and you're an inspiration to the young and the old in the way that we trust the Lord in every single season. So thank you for being who you are. Thank you for responding and saying yes. Thank you for being here today. Appreciate it.
It's our Gen X DNA.
Yeah.
All right. That's it.
That's
Thank
it.
All right. Everyone, thanks for joining us here in the Radiant Podcast. Please subscribe. We're going to be here every week, having more conversations with people about God, church, life, and we want you to join us and to be in this time together. So hit subscribe. And if there's things that you're feeling in this podcast that stood out to you, please leave a comment. Let us know what you're thinking. We'd love to hear more from you. We'll see you next week.